Thank you, everybody. We're at the portion of our conversation where we're going to focus very specifically on the relationship between the requirements of the Aicp Code of Ethics and some of this business-friendly stuff we've been talking about. And the handout for this portion of the conversation is the Aicp Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct, adopted 2005, and then subsequent dates of amendment, and that you will need to refer to that later in the conversation. So I've been talking about planning in this brave new frontier where the mission of the Community Development Department is to promote economic development. And I'm sure there are people who are saying, whoa, I thought what planning did was serve the public interest. And that responsibility is still central to the code. So the challenge we have as planners is to figure out a way to have that be central to our practice in this business-friendly environment. What we're going to talk about in this portion of the conversation is what is the role of the planner in terms of figuring out the ethical framework for the decisions that we have to make. And part of that is, you know, this really isn't an ethical issue. And then we're going to talk about, well, what happens when your ethical responsibilities take center stage? What are the kinds of pressures you can reasonably expect to experience? And then what are the techniques that you can use to respond to those? The roles of the planner, in the sense of the Code of Ethics, involve representing the best of the profession. Planners always need to remember that focus on personal integrity, along with serving the public interest, has to be central to the way we do our work. Now, I understand that sometimes this stuff gets out of balance, and it requires some back and forth, but we cannot, in the pursuit of business-friendly customer service, ignore our ethical responsibilities. Planners have a larger role in working with applicants around solving departmental differences, coordinating projects. Planners have a role to facilitate and mediate sometimes between the applicant and the public, because the public comes with real concerns sometimes and doesn't know how to express them. And so spending time and listening effectively and then being able to address a concern is an important role that you play as a planner that can have some ethical pitfalls. So I was at a recent meeting, and the neighbors were just going ballistic. We're going to lose all of our on-street parking. We need all of our on-street parking. And we're flipping through the staff report. There's nothing that talks about losing the on-street parking. And I stood there and I realized the presentation board done by the architect of the beautiful building didn't put any little cars along the street, because that would have messed up his aesthetics. Well, what that meant to the community was this giant block was going to have a big new building on it, and 4 blocks worth of on-street parking was going to be lost. We were able to explain to the public that the parking was still going to be there, but they didn't believe us. So I made the architect go up with a pencil, and I drew some little cars in the picture live. And at that point, people said, oh, okay. So playing that tiny role of listening and facilitating is a really important one. We have to be effective at communicating. We have to communicate up an organization, we have to communicate down, we have to communicate sideways. We got to talk to the city PIO as well as the engineer. Having a heart attack if the driveway aisle width is going to be 23 feet 9 inches instead of 24 feet. We have to be problem solvers. That means that the wonderful reason that we became planners is alive as our biggest challenge. We have to see the big picture, we have to act strategically, and we have to try to figure out Is there a way to respect the underlying ethical principles of the profession, as well as uphold the standards and policies in the plans, as well as help an applicant through the process? The code has additional roles for us. You are expected to be an advocate for equity, for justice. There is specific language in the Aicp Code of Ethics asking planners, and I'm going to read it because it's important, in A1F, we shall seek social justice by working to expand choice and opportunity for all persons, recognizing a special responsibility to plan for the needs of the disadvantaged, to promote racial and economic integration. We shall urge the alteration of policies, institutions, and decisions that oppose such needs. That is part of your job description as a certified planner. And all of the roles that I laid out in the previous slides, all of them require honest communication. And if you've been actually looking at these slides, you're going to see that term communicate a lot in there. I cannot stress for you of the lessons that I've learned in planning, the ability to communicate effectively, and I think the bulk of that is to listen effectively is the key to our success in the profession. The job that I started a few months ago, I'm an assistant director. So what happens is that the staff is nervous, you know, it's a new boss, I don't know what I can say and what I can't say. And I explained my theory of communication at my first staff meeting, and I said, in any conversation, there are three possible scenarios. I'm completely right and you're completely wrong. I'm partly right and you're partly wrong. Or I'm wrong and you're right. In 2 out of 3 of those, I was either partly or completely wrong. And so I begin a conversation with the notion that I have more to learn from you than you do from me. And looking consciously throughout our careers for techniques for improving our communication skills, for widening the repertoire of how we listen and write and discuss and present is a significant responsibility that we have as planners.